Bless you. Anyway, but you know, like sometimes for newer writers coming up, like one of the things that they get hung up on, and we've talked about this in class, is like they want everybody to relate to something, so then they say something so general that it's so broad that actually nobody can relate to it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know how they say like the personal is universal. Like you have to have details that bring people into your story in some way
Yeah.
for you to visualize it and connect to it emotionally. And if it's too broad, then it's really hard to find anything to connect to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can you say more about that?
Well, I mean, I think that kind of touches on, like, I'm under the impression there's like 5 songs to write ever. There are like 5 songs. That's all. You miss her, you love her, you broke up but you want her to come sleep with you tonight. Like, there's like a handful of ideas. I think that what you're trying to do is write the same song in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I mean, we're all saying the same things, and we're just trying to find different ways to say them, and different ways to spin that idea. And so, I mean, those are broad ideas, but like in your verses, like Tom Petty was always really good about, his choruses would just be this vague thing that when it hits you're like, oh yeah, that's me. But then his verse would be this crazy specific story that was him. And I think to a lesser extent that's kind of what we try to do with commercial country music, is like you paint a pretty specific story, but it's a broad idea.
Broad idea, exactly.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Exactly. So it's a big idea. It's a universal idea in some way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just.
Yeah, it's a big idea in that it's a love song. It's a smaller idea in that she broke your heart, but you miss her, and you're drinking this kind of alcohol, or your walls are painted that color. So that's the you part of it, and then the general of it is everybody else.
Yes. Awesome. That's a great explanation.
I put alcohol in there because it's country music.
Right. Because alcohol is in no other music.
Mm-mm.
No, never.
You missed the tailgating.
And tailgating.
Tailgating, right.
That's funny. My dad is here. He's actually outside because he was with me at the party.
Doesn't he want to come in?
I asked him. He said it made him feel weird.
He did?
Yeah, he comes to all my stuff and always feels weird. But
Is he
but
like in
was,
the car?
No, he's sitting out there.
Oh, that's your dad out there?
That handsome
What?
fella. Yeah. But
I just thought he looked familiar because I've met him
You
once.
met him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But he lives in a country town, and he said just like last weekend he was at this little restaurant, and there was this high school couple sitting on the back of the tailgate with her legs dangling, and he stopped and like said, "Hey, y'all look like a country song." And they just giggled. But I mean, that stuff happens.
Right.
If you're from those towns, those are real things. for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So how do you find a fresh way to say the same thing again and again and again? Because obviously you're doing that really well.
Well, one of the main things that I come down to is I write a lot with this girl named Nicole Gallion, and she's just so good at like I was saying before, interesting adjectives. Like just describe the noun of your story in a different way, and it makes it so you can write the same thing, but you have all these quirky little pieces that build up to this story that feels interesting. Bless you. That one was a sneeze. But she and I wrote We Were Us together, the duet with Keith and Linda. And I felt like a lot of that song was her. Like these verses are just these shotgun phrases and ideas, and that was one way that was fun to write a song that is kind of about lots. I mean, everybody has miss you songs. That's what that is. It's a miss you song.
That's an amazing study in economy, that lyric, you know, and so much story is being told in so few words, and it's a very specific story.
Yeah.
And you might take it one of another, you know, one of a couple of ways, like whatever went down in the second verse, you know, but it's something that you know is real. You know, it feels really honest, and like I said, it feels very specific. And so much said in so few words.
Well, and it kind of leaves...
Wish I could show that on the screen back there.
Well, one thing I do like that song does is it is a specific story. I mean, that was a story that we were telling that came from us talking about a relationship. But, I mean, people can hear that story and make it into a lot of different things. It's not necessarily romantic. It's never specified that it is. It's just kind of implied. And there's a lot of power in... I'm sort of going back and forth. I'm saying conflicting things, but there's a lot of power in vagueness sometimes too.
Mhm.
But that song is like specifically vague.
It's specifically vague, and that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Because like whatever went down in the backseat and the promises and everything, you know, like the promises weren't kept, and you know that,
Yeah.
right? So like you see the picture, and you hear a couple words, and you go, oh yeah, I know how that went. That didn't work out, you know. I mean, there's enough story there to. In fact, the fact that it's specifically vague, those few words tell so much of the story, it's almost better not to hear the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially with a sad song. I've never said that phrase before, but it's going to be my new favorite phrase. Specifically vague. Like, all my favorite sad songs do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just started thinking about, like, that Chesney tune, Come Over. It's very specific,
Mhm.
but very vague, too. You don't necessarily know, because I don't necessarily need to know that she slept with your boyfriend or that. Like, I don't necessarily need those pieces of it.
Mhm.
And if you give them to me, it might actually make me as a listener less interested. I would probably rather hear about how you've been pacing for an hour than necessarily why you've been pacing for an hour, because then I can say, well, I've done that too, maybe, and maybe my reason wasn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of invites me in as a listener.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the pacing pulls you into a certain kind of emotion that you know you've had, so you don't have to have had the same story to have the same feelings.
Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of is the art and the dance of writing, especially commercially, is like making that your story apply to a lot of other stories.
Mm-hmm. Right? Okay, how do you do that?
Well, I think it's that specifically vague thing. Like, put some really cool images in there that are your story and they're unique to you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right, unique to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
but leave some wiggle room in there so that it's relatable, and I think that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Perfect
Makes
sense.
sense in my brain.
No, perfect sense. Exactly. It's walking the line between something everybody can connect to and something, you know, that you connect to, and trying to find how it all fits together. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you must be doing that extremely well.
Well, or else I'm just writing with people that are good at it, and I just hang out
Oh, whatever.
and ride their coattails.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's really what you need to do.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
ride people's coattails.
You're right. Find some really good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.